Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Comrade Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be doing a faction focus for the Soviet Bloc. We are going to be deep diving this Konflikt 47 army, talking about how the faction feels, what is their playstyle like, and going through every single unit available for them. So without further ado, let's fix bayonets and oolra! Right into this thing. You there, are you sick of languishing at home with nothing to do, wanking, eating expensive German biscuits and just generally wasting your life? Well, I have got the solution for you. Warlord Games is now the proud sponsor of the Mordian Glory channel, and they have given me an affiliate link. By clicking on that link down in the description below, you'll be able to get yourself some fantastic World War II bolt action miniatures. These finely detailed models are the perfect way of finding yourself a hobby that will finally get you out of the masturbatorum.
I'll make that deal. How about you? You make that deal?
I make that deal.
Damn good deal.
So what are you waiting for? Click on the affiliate link down below, support the channel, and get off the sofa. The first thing I want to say is a big thank you. You see, in the last faction focus where I talked about the Axis, I asked you guys which nation you want me to cover next, and overwhelmingly, you said the Soviet Bloc. And your wish is my command, and here we are today. So a big thank you to everyone that watched that last video, and a huge thank you to everyone that commented as well. But with all that said, now let's get into the video proper, beginning with a look at the Soviet Bloc and what this faction is all about. The first and most important thing I want to mention with the Soviets is they 100% pass the vibe check. It's probably because of a lot of post-war movies and stuff like that, but when I think of the Soviet Union, I think of crude, rugged technology which is able to keep up with the over-engineered and complicated technology of more Western powers. The idea of the brave Soviet soldier holding the line against the fascist attackers, all of that is in this army. It just feels like you're playing the Soviet Union, but dialed up to 11. But don't get it twisted. The grim dark side of communism is fully on display here, and that is really well summarized in the lore segment that we get with this army. The idea that Stalin is willing to sacrifice tens of thousands of his own people just to be able to create one Soviet Superman. The idea that maybe the crude Soviet technology isn't quite as rugged and reliable as the propaganda reels would say. Surely those Ursus Bear Infantry would never harm their own comrades. I think Warlord Games have absolutely nailed it with the feel of this faction, both in universe and on the tabletop. You really get that sense of we're all marching together, comrades. Communism will take over the world. Yes, socialism for all. All you have to fear is losing your chains. But then at the same time, you have that sort of tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, and it's not afraid to sort of have some of the read between the lines moments as well. It's just very well done, and when I was reading the Soviet lore, it made me just really gel with the faction. The fact that there was the obvious over-the-top propaganda, but also the clear sort of grim, dark undertones there as well. But it's not just in the lore summary and the different lore segments that you have with each unit where this works. Like I said, it very, very much translates to the tabletop. And when you are playing these guys, you feel like you are playing the Soviet Union dialed up to 11, where the Axis lean into ever more degenerate Wunderwaffen, where the Japanese develop ever more crazy technology, where the Brits and the Americans lean more into their firepower and their weaponry. The Soviet solution for the Rift War, the Soviet solution for the new state of the world that they find themselves in, is pure, unrelenting brute force. That's right, Soviet technology may be a little cruder than that of the decadent West, but it is no less effective. And When you are playing the Soviets on the tabletop, you feel like you are the brute force, the aggressive faction. The Soviets are all about getting up close and personal. They're all about grabbing the enemy by the belt and getting in amongst them. You got to be launching those wide, fast-paced, furious assaults, bare infantry crashing forward, tearing the enemy limb from limb, daughters of the Motherland sprinting forward, collapsing buildings with superior Soviet sonic technology. In summary, the Soviet Bloc is the close assault faction of this game. Now, whilst every faction in Bot Action can do a little bit of everything, and if you wanted to create a Soviet gun line, I'm absolutely sure you could, the army seems to naturally play in a way where you're trying to get in amongst them, get up close to them, and start cracking heads. To draw a comparison to another game, the Soviet Bloc feels like the orcs from Warhammer 40k. How you're going to have large numbers of tough yet crude units that are at their best when they are at the sharp end of things. But I appreciate all of this is very high level, bit of a summary as it were. So now let's start getting into the nitty-gritty detail, and we'll begin with the army rules. So let's talk about first how you can incorporate bolt action units into your Konflikt 47 army. Generally speaking, you are allowed to include any units from the bolt action armies of the Soviet Union 3rd edition book in Konflikt 47. There's 100% cross compatibility. There is some guidance around how you might want to stick with late war units to represent that, we are now in 1947, but strictly speaking, there are no restrictions. And with the Soviets especially, I actually think that's a good thing. If you read the lore around the Soviets in K47, you'll understand that they were the first to feel the wrath of the Green Vault and their new power armor and mutant soldiers. And they suffered horrendously for it. The only reason that they didn't collapse is they paid a hefty price in blood. Now, to me, this speaks volumes to what kind of bolt action units you could include in your Konflikt 47 Soviet army. Because the Soviets will have been desperate. They will have been throwing anything and everything into the front lines. So whilst it's not a late war unit, the idea of a T-35 or a BT-7 being in your Konflikt 47 army is totally okay, because it just represents the Soviets raiding the tank storage yards and just getting whatever they can to the front lines. I suppose the big question is, how do you actually include these in your list? Well, it's very simple. They must just be put in the relevant slot in the relevant platoon. So for example, let's say you wanted to include an NKVD squad or a tank riders squad in your army. That would go in a basic infantry slot, for example, in the assault platoon. Or perhaps you want to include something like the aforementioned BT-7 or maybe an IS-2, something like, or an IS-3. You would put that in the tank slot in something like an armored platoon or an armored walker platoon. But I know some of you are going to be also asking, okay, so if I can take bolt action units, which ones should I be looking at? Now, the Soviet Union has a lot of units to pick from, but generally speaking, I think a good area to draw from bolt action into K47 for the Soviets specifically is your tanks. In Konflikt 47, you'll notice that a lot of the Soviet tanks, and we'll get to this when we get to the unit review, they kind of struggle with long-ranged anti-tank. And the options that you do have tend to be a little expensive. Things like the Mastodon, even the Molot, even the humble T-34. You're looking at a 200 point plus unit, I should say, to get access to some kind of anti-tank vehicle. I really like the look of things like the Su-76 because it's cheap, it's armored, and it comes with a half-decent anti-tank gun. So when we looked at the Axis, I said the transports are where you want to lean into. With the Soviets, I'm thinking the tanks. It is worth noting that any units that you pull from bolt action don't get to benefit from your Soviet Bloc army special rules, which we'll be looking at in a moment, and they don't get to benefit from the bolt action ones either. But whilst that sounds kind of sucky on paper, in reality, it actually has very, very little impact in the game, especially if you're drawing just on the tanks. In fact, I'm going to go a step further here. What's kind of funny is when people first saw this, you don't get any of the army special rules, they started getting really upset about the bolt action units. But when you actually dig a little deeper, you'll notice that in some ways they actually do benefit from the army special rules, because a lot of them have nothing to do with the unit. So for example, with the Axis, Our Salvation, which is where you get to re-roll the rift dice at the end, has nothing to do with the units. You just get to reroll a rift dice, right? So it's one of the things where people can get very hung up on it because they just see the words, but they don't actually go that step further and look at how is this actually working. And theory doesn't meet reality, and the reality of the situation is that your bolt action units not benefiting from your army special rules is such a minimal thing that after a game or two, you'll realize that it's genuinely not a problem. But speaking of army special rules, we should take a look at the Soviet ones. And we're going to start off with harmonic resonance. At the start of every game turn, roll a d6 for each enemy unit on the table that does not have the Fearless special rule. On a 5+, that unit immediately receives a pin marker. Oh my god, this is so good. This is so good. Konflikt 47, like bolt action, has a really important morale system. And pin markers are a way that you start forcing morale checks and making your opponent's units less likely to do as they're told. Now, sure, if they're fearless, then it's going to be less impactful. But this affects all enemy units, whether they're vehicles or infantry or artillery or walkers. It just doesn't matter. It affects all of them. And any bolt action or K-47 veteran will tell you that even getting one pin can throw a huge spanner in your works. How many of us have failed a one-pin order test? And what I love about this is it can have a bit of a cascade effect, because let's say turn one, you put a pin on an enemy unit. They fail their one-pin order test. They don't clear that pin. Next turn, you might get lucky, roll another 5+ for the unit, and now they've got 2 pins on them. So even if they then pass their next order test, they still have a pin on them, which means they still have a -1 to hit when they're shooting you. When I first saw this ability, I thought it was phenomenally overpowered. But after a couple of games with it, I realized that it's totally okay. It's more just an inconvenience for your opponent. One that at times may have some pretty big consequences, but it's more like a splinter in the mind. And the reason for this is, A, every faction has access to fearless units, whether it's Brit robots or whether it's the Schreckwolf and Totenkorn Shibuto. Everyone's got some kind of fearless. Even the Americans can get fearless on their Paragons, for example. And on top of this, there are just a lot less units in K-47 due to the fact that a lot of them are quite expensive. In bolt action, normally you're looking at like 12 to 18 order dice. In pure K-47 games, you're looking at like 8 or 9. So realistically, you're probably generating a couple of extra pins each turn, which is great, but it's not the swaths of pins causing your entire opponent's army to collapse to the ground going, I am one with Yuri. So yeah, it's a solid ability, and you've got to remember to roll at the beginning of each turn. You've got to do that, but it's not overpowered at all. And it's one which can lead to just some amazing, crazy clutch moments as well. Next up, we have Tsar Stalina. Whenever a Soviet bloc infantry or artillery unit fails a morale check and would be destroyed as a result, re-roll it and apply the second result instead. If a test is passed in this way, the unit is immediately uprated to the next quality level for the rest of the game. If the unit was already veteran, it gains +1 morale value instead. So this is kind of an adaptation of For the Motherland from the bolt action Soviet Union, where you get to re-roll a failed auto test, but not auto test, failed morale check if you're going to get destroyed. But it actually goes a step further with the whole quality level increasing. So you could go from inexperienced to regular and then regular to veteran. And the idea being like, oh my God, I can go from like inexperienced all the way up to veteran. Sounds great on paper. But again, in reality, it's actually more of a nice to have. Think about it for a moment. If you've got a squad of 12 conscripts and you lose half of them and then they pass their morale check, you're going to go up to regular. Okay, that's fine, but you're on 6 blokes now. If that unit then loses another 3 and goes down to just 3 blokes and gets cut in half again, and then you roll and go up to veteran, well, okay, well done. You are now the proud owner of 3 whole veteran infantry. And if they're conscripts, they're probably just running around with rifles. So it's one of those things that it looks like, oh my God, so powerful on paper, but actually it's definitely more of a, that was kind of cool. What I've actually noticed as well is that I tend to take a lot of my units just as veteran standard. Because if I'm taking power armor, I really want to be veterans in power armor so that I'm getting that sweet, sweet damage value 6+, or I'm taking something like Daughters of the Motherland, who also just start off as like veteran, right? At that point, just going up the plus extra on morale is, again, a nice one. It will help you pass orders and stuff like that, but it's not it's not busted. You look at this and you think you're going to be running around with super duper mega units, but the reality is you might get 1 or 2 units getting 1 or 2 level ups across your entire army. The next one is Heroes of the Soviet Bloc, and this might be... This is a good one. This is a good one. At the start of the game, before deployment, 1 non-hero, non-rift infantry unit in a Soviet bloc force may be designated Heroes of the Soviet Bloc. The chosen unit immediately gains a point of guts. Any model in the unit may spend as if they were a hero. Furthermore, friendly units within 6 inches of the Heroes of the Soviet Bloc unit gain the Fanatic special rule. Alright, there's a couple of ways you can take advantage of this one. The first one is you take a unit and you make it into this massive force multiplier. There's absolutely a playstyle where you take something like a unit of, like, let's say power armored guys, and then you just surround them with cheap bricks of utter meat. Just bricks of 12 Soviet conscripts who are inexperienced and shirkers at the same time. And the idea is just you're getting 5-point infantry, which are being made fanatics by the Heroes of the Soviet Bloc. And that's cool and that's crazy. And yeah, they'll all die like piss, but there's so many of them. For every Star Trooper, you're getting like 5 or 6 of your guys, right? So that's one way you can use the Soviet Bloc. You can just have it as this big fanatical force multiplier. The other way, and this is the way that I used in my last game actually, is I just gave a unit of points of guts basically for free. So I took a unit of the Soviet power armored guys, the Mark 1, with the extra guns, and they're quite slow. And so I thought, you know what, I'll make them the Heroes of the Soviet Bloc. I won't really worry about it being a force multiplier. And so what I did is turn 1, I moved onto the board, and then I used my guts to straight away put my dice back into the bag, which then meant I was then able to potentially move again. So you're taking these slow moving Soviet infantry who normally only move sort of 4 inches and shoot, or 8 inches on a run, and suddenly you're able to get them 16 inches at the board turn 1. Now, because of their short range PP guns, I know what it sounds like, but that's what they're called, the short range PP guns. Being able to get them up the board so quickly was really, really helpful. And it actually meant that pretty much from turn 1, these guys were blasting. So you can use it as a force multiplier, or you can simply use it as, hey, let's get some guts on some power armor and get them moving, or get them double dackering. Guts is one of the most powerful abilities in the game. Just being able to get a point of it for free is amazing. It's that simple. But last and certainly not least, we have Stolen Rift Tech. Now, when I first saw this, I thought it was trash, but I actually quite like it. Okay. Once per game, when a Soviet bloc rift die is drawn randomly from the dice bag, rolled and assigned to a Soviet bloc rift unit, its owning player may swap the result with that of another rift die assigned to another unit within 6 inches, friend or foe. For example, if it rolled an exhausted result and an enemy within 6 inches of that unit had an active rift die, you may change the Soviet rift die to active and the enemy's rift die to exhausted. So you're literally like swapping the dice, right? You're nicking their power. The reason why when I first saw this, I thought it was trash, is I was like, God, there's too many steps there. It's got to be drawn out the bag randomly. I've got to be within 6 inches. I've got to be exhausted, blah, 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 right? But the thing is with the Soviets, you're an up close and personal faction. From turn 2 onwards, you're probably going to be in amongst the enemy. And if you're taking a lot of Rift units like Ursus, Daughters, ZP tanks, then there's a good chance you're going to have some exhausted Rift dice. And there's a good chance that you are going to be able to actually use this. And in my first game that I played with the Soviets, there was a couple of opportunities when I could have taken advantage of this, but I just forgot the rule existed because I was just getting to learn the faction. That was just my first game with them. And then in the last game that I played with them, I actually managed to take advantage of Stolen Rift Tech, and it was really good. Really, really helpful. It's one of those where you'll look at it and go, pfft, and then you'll start playing some games and you'll realize like every game there's an opportunity to actually just nick an opponent's Rift dice, and it's brilliant. And it's not even sometimes about juicing your unit up. A lot of times you think about, I'm going to use it to make my unit more powerful. A lot of the times it's just about making your opponent's unit way worse. That's really what it's all about. Being able to take those Shrek Wolfen and suddenly they're not fast anymore. Being able to take, if you're facing a off like against enemy Ursus, you're now lumbering. All those totem core, you can't regenerate anymore. Yeah, there's so many ways that you can just fuck your opponent over with this, and you don't even really think about that until you're in the game and the opportunity sort of arises organically, and then you're like, oh yeah, I quite like Stolen Rift Tech. Overall, I think the Soviet army rules are a really nice mixture of nice to have, fun ones that sort of pop up here and there, and then just always really useful. I think Harmonic Resonance and Heroes of the Soviet Bloc are really strong and are the two main abilities of this army, the two that you're going to be taking into account when doing your grand strategic plans. I think Tsar Stalina is fine, but probably the most nice to have. And Stolen Rift Tech is going to be one of those where when you get it to pop off, it can be really nice, but again, it's more of a nice to have than anything else. And that's fine. Not every army rule needs to be a 360 no scope. If you have two strong army rules and then two just nice army rules, then that to me feels like a nice balance, and the Soviets have got that. But now let us move on to the units, beginning with the heroes. And the hero for the Soviets is Commissar Gregor Drugov. I'm just going to say it. This guy's amazing. Really, really, really good unit. Very powerful. Possibly the most powerful character in the game at the moment, and one of the most just powerful units in the game overall. The reason he's so good is because he's so damn tough. He's basically an Ursus bear commander. Now, he's still a company commander, so he's able to do things like snapping 2 and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, you almost don't care about that, right? He is damage value 7+. He has Ursine Fury, so he is able to go fast and also get extra pen for a Rift dice. This guy has got 2 Rift dice because he has 1 for his ability and 1 because he has Rift Mastery. Now, you could use Rift Mastery to do like a surging bonus, increase your damage value to 8+. Sure, yeah, entirely possible. Amazing. In fact, on demand, 8+ toughness. Woo! Very, very good. He also has got the Commissar rules, so he's got not one step backwards. But honestly, the big thing is just he's got 3 guts, man. He's got 3 guts and 1 luck and can take 2 bears. So he's just an absolute mega tank. Think about this, right? So he's damage value 7. Already phenomenal. On demand, he can go up to damage value 8 if you want to, which he's now one of the toughest units in the game. For infantry units, I should say. He's got tough to kill, which means he has a 5+ save unless he's in cover, in which case he gets +2 to his save. So in hard cover, he's going to have a 2+ save. Even soft cover, he's got a 3+ save. But then he has 3 points of guts. So even if you roll a 1, let's say you're in that hard cover and you roll a 1, just spend a point of guts and increase it to a 2 and you're fine. Now, those guts do get expended, and you're probably going to want to use those guts to be able to, put his dice back in the bag and multiple activate him in a turn. But still, great. And also the guts can be used offensively, like I mentioned, and defensively with increasing your stats. But you can also just make the opponent not wound you. What if someone's got like a pen 1 weapon and they get a 6? They roll to hit you, they roll to wound you, they get a 6 to wound, and you just go, oh yeah, I'll make that a 5. Yeah, you don't wound me now. And then he's essentially got 4 wounds, right? Because he's got the 2 bears, which are not only very capable, but also basically ablative wounds. And then he's got a point of luck. And then he just has his own wound, right? His own value. So he is unbelievably tough. He is unbelievably killy with the fact that he has an assault rifle, so there's 12 attacks in this unit at pen 2, and he can make them go up to pen 3 because of Ursine Fury, and he can just be fast. Yeah, he does everything. And yes, he is very expensive at 250 points. It's 246 points, I think. But yes, he is very, very expensive for 3 models, but I don't think he's overcosted. I don't think he's overcosted at all. I would happily put Drugov in my list every single time. But moving on to the regular HQ teams and officers, and we've got the company commander. Truth be told, if you're going to take company commander, I really think you should probably just spring for Drugov. He's just good. He's very, very good because he does everything that the company commander can do, and then also can basically just act as like a squad of Ursus infantry. And so if you already were thinking of taking Ursus, you might as well then just go for Drugov as your company commander. So I personally wouldn't really bother with a company commander officer or in Guards Mark II power armor in a standard 1,250 point game or 1,500 point game. However, if you start playing at higher points levels, maybe you're playing some sort of like big mega battle, then yeah, company commanders will have a really viable place there. But in standard game size, I don't think you need them. If you're going to go for one, you might as well go for the Drugov. Platoon commanders, on the other hand, are a very different kettle of fish because you need to have one of these if you're taking an assault platoon, and you have to take an assault platoon, so you're going to have one of these. There's a couple of different ways you can approach this. I would either go for a basic platoon commander, inexperienced, with a point of guts and nothing else. Cheap as cheerful, absolute guts caddy. That's one way I'd run him. Or I would go full into the platoon commander officer in Guards Mark II armor. The reason I would go for one of those 2 different methods is because one is basically attacks with a guts point to make him actually useful, and then you just take a bunch of units that don't really rely upon platoon commanders to get the job done. For example, you don't need a good platoon commander if you're just running a load of Ursus, for example, because they're fearless, just do what they want. You don't really need a good platoon commander if you're taking a bunch of Daughters of the Motherland, because they'll just be getting their own pins off themselves and running around and having a great time, right? So you don't need to worry about those kind of things. But if you're taking a lot of power armor, maybe you're taking a lot of Mark 1 power armor or Mark 2 power armor, you are going to want an officer that can actually be useful and feel like a meaningful unit. He's not just a dice in the bag, he's actually contributing to the fight. And so I would either go inexperienced platoon commander with just guts, no other upgrades, or I would go officer in Guards Mark II armor. I'd go veteran on him. I'd give him 2 extra bozos in the squad. I'd give him a point of guts. And then I would go and replace 2 of the SMGs? So I'd replace one of the SMGs with an anti-tank rifle, and I would give that anti-tank rifle to the officer himself. And that way you've got an officer who's actually quite tough. You've got a bit of anti-tank rifle in there, so he can actually damage some units there. And you know what? I'd probably also upgrade to RPG 1s. Yeah, no, I would, because that way the officer can fire the anti-tank rifle shot, another guy can fire an RPG shot each turn, and then one guy can just be a shit muncher that eats the first bullet, right? And that way you've actually got a capable unit that's putting out a couple of decent shots a turn, and they've got guts that are helping, and then they're actually durable because they've got the armor and the veteran, and then they're actually providing a good leadership buff. And if you're going to take this, like I said, if you're going to have units that actually are going to rely upon having officers because they're not fearless or fanatics or anything like that. Next, we have some of these support characters. I probably wouldn't bother with the medics. The reason why I probably wouldn't bother with a medic is because either you're going to be taking a rift unit, which they can't help, or you're going to be taking a power armored unit, which they can't help, or you're going to be taking a ship munching conscript who's probably not worth helping. So medics, wouldn't bother with. Forward observers, artillery and air observers, I think are both valuable. In normal bolt action, these units are kind of expensive. In K47, when you're playing normally at about 1,500 points, they're eminently affordable. There are good dice in the bag, and at the end of the day, they can still run around and do some objective play afterwards. I really like the artillery forward observer in K47, and I would not begrudge anyone from putting one in their list. Big question is, do we just take him on his own, or do we give him a couple of bozos to run around with? It is tempting to go for a couple of extra blokes with assault rifles. I think both approaches are valid. I think having him just do his ability, spaff it out, and then that's it, works. I think having him do his ability and then have 3 guys running around with assault rifles, yeah, I think there's value in that. Another support character who I think is definitely worth your time is the Commissar. But I don't think he's an auto-include. I think you want to build your list around him. If you're taking units that don't really rely upon morale, you don't need a Commissar. Again, the aforementioned Ursus, anything fanatical, I don't think you need it. If you're going for inexperienced conscripts, I think this guy is absolutely an auto take. The one thing you have to be careful with is because he gives you an order test reroll, right? But he has to kill a guy to do it. Now, if you look at this through the lens of conscripts, yeah, I'll absolutely kill potentially a 5-point shirk to get these guys moving, right? Think about, you've got the heroes of the Soviet blocs, they're making everyone fanatics. You've got an officer who's giving them +2 morale, and then you've got the Commissar who's allowing people to get rerolls. All of those layers can build together to make a really, really cool Soviet horde list work in K47. The issue is, though, you've got to be careful who he's executing, because killing a 5-point conscript makes sense. Killing a 30+ point power armor or daughters of the Motherland really is not really where you want to be going. I mean, hey, maybe in a clutch moment it will absolutely be necessary and it could win you the game. Sure, don't discount it. But you've got to be careful who you execute, because this guy's probably only going to be costing you 15 points. And if he's blowing away double his points every turn, it could be a problem. But let's move on from the characters and the heroes to the poor bloody infantry. And where else to start than with the humble Soviet infantry squad, the backbone of the Soviet bloc. Now, when we looked at the Axis basic infantry, our conclusion was that it's probably best that you take them as sort of small elite support units, whether it's a small squad with a single flamethrower embedded in it or a small squad with double LMG. But either way, you are looking at taking more elite, more smaller units. With the Soviets, I think you go completely the other way, because the Soviets have the ability to run one of the most insane horde builds in the game, and I love it. Now, I kind of mentioned this just a little bit ago, but I want to go through it in proper detail now. How do you build this Soviet horde using the Soviet infantry squads? Well, what you do is you take maxed out units of inexperienced infantry, which you then downgrade to shirkers, but you can also then take them as green. So by taking them as shirkers, you end up with infantry which only costs 5 points per model, which is bonkers. Properly bonkers, right? Because if your opponent is taking, let's say, a style trooper with no upgrades whatsoever, you now have 6 infantry to every one of his Style Trooping. If your opponent is taking Schreckwolfen, you are now getting very nearly 9 infantry for every Schreckwolfen. You are going to out at 1,500 points. The only problem you're going to encounter is finding the slots to include all of these bozos. But taking something like double assault platoon, which is totally allowed, taking double assault platoon will give you access to 4 of these squads. That will, or if you take an assault platoon and a walker platoon, but then the walker platoon, you've got to start trying to like give them transport stuff. So I'm just thinking double assault platoon. Very simple. That'll give you access to 4 of these units, which will give you access to 48 infantry. Now, I don't mean to alarm you, but those 48 infantry will only cost you 240 points. Now, the thing is that, yes, they've only got rifles, but they're now inexperienced shirkers. Which means that, in theory, the moment they take 4 pins, the unit auto breaks and dies, right? The way you fix that is with your Heroes of the Soviet Bloc Army Special Rule. Because as long as your Soviet infantry are within 6 inches of whichever unit you've decided to make Heroes of the Soviet Bloc, they're fanatics. And fanatics can't be pinned out. Now, yeah, you've still got to take order tests, but that's what rallies are for. That's what your officers are for. That's what your commissars are for. And, you know, so if you're those aren't that expensive to include, right? So you end up with this like core of power armor with just dozens and dozens of these shit munchers surround them who are fanatics, which then have a chance of uprating to green for free. Just roll that 6, great. Or when they start taking horrific casualties, which they're going to, well, what's going to happen? They're going to uprate thanks to the Tsar Stalina Army Special Rule. Because they lose half of their blokes, pass the order test on, pass the order test on the reroll if they're going to break. Suddenly now they're regulars. So you've got green that might make them regulars, and then you've got Tsar Stalina that might make them regulars. And the best bit is, if they just shit the bed and run away, if something just goes horribly wrong, then that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's great. No dramas. All gravy, baby. So, you do have to be careful with how you're going to get Tsar Stalina to not get screwed over by Heroes of the Soviet Bloc. There's a little bit of crossing the streams there, which could cause some problems. I get it. But the point is that you can get so much meat in your army with the Soviets. And those units aren't terrible as well, because they're fanatics. So they're not going to break in combat either unless every single one of them dies. And they only need to kill like 1 or 2 things to get their points back in melee. So let's look at the Style Trooping again as an example, right? So your inexperienced blokes are wounding those Style Trooping on 6s followed by 6s in combat. But you've got 12 attacks. So statistically, you should get 1 6 followed by a 6, which should kill Style Trooping. So suddenly, your 60-point unit has got half its points back. And remember, in assault, especially if they've assaulted you, you're striking at the same time. And if the Style Trooping hit you back, then they're going to have, like, let's say it's like a squad of 3. They're going to kill you on 3s. So they're going to kill like 4 of your guys. You've still got 8 left. So you just go again. And hey, yeah, you're fishing for 6s followed by 6s. But all you need to do over all of those attacks is just get a couple of 6s followed by 6s. And that economy works out for you. That equation works out for you. Is this broken? No. Is it so damn Soviet? Yes. Is it absolutely a vibe? 110%. But you guys know me. I can go on and on and on about Soviet hordes and conscripts. I have to drag myself away. But fortunately, the next unit we're going to look at might be my favorite one in all of the Soviet Union. It is the man in a can, the Guards Mark I Armored Infantry. Soviet Ned Kelly is here. I would say that the Guards Mark I Armored Infantry are actually some of the best power armor in the game. Controversial statement, I know, but whilst they are quite slow with only a 4 and 8 move, they pack a lot of firepower. So you take them in 5-man squads to start off with. You can actually go up to 10-man squads, which is pretty legit. And I think if you do go for a big 10-man squad, they're quite a viable target for being heroes of the Soviet bloc and being like a big force multiplier, right? Or you just take them as a 5-man squad and have them heroes and benefit the guts, like I mentioned earlier. But I like 5-man squads taken as veteran because each one of these guys is equipped with the DPM PP gun, the Pulymet Boykby. I try and say it right. I say it wrong every time. Each one of these guns has a lot of firepower. In fact, each PP gun fires 4 shots at pen 1. And you can actually equip troops with double PP gun, which means each bloke can put out 8 shots. Admittedly, not everyone in a squad, but up to 4 in a unit can be putting out an additional 4 shots. So you could have like a 5-man squad with 4 extra guns and you'd be putting out, that's 8 shots times 4. So that's 32 plus another 4 from the guy who just got 1. 36 shots. Now, yeah, that's going to come in at 210 points on a veteran squad. And yeah, you probably do want to take them veteran because, well, you want to be actually feeling the benefits of your power armor, right? But that's all right. 36 shots. That's all right. So yeah, they've got a lot of DACA. The DACA has pen. They're also weirdly good in combat because they're like a mode gun, so they can switch over to assault and get like extra attacks in combat. And yeah, and they're good on reactive fire. The only downside to them is they're a little spenny if you start going for all the double PP, and they're a little slow. But take a squad of 5 veteran, couple of extra PPs, and then chuck them in a Studebaker truck, or whatever, chuck them in a cheap transport, yeet them down the board, get them into range, get them into some cover, just have them dig in and just start blasting. They're really, really solid, and whilst they have a couple of downsides, it's very straightforward how you can play around those downsides and get them rocking and cocking. Next up is the Guards Mark II Armored Infantry. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm not so hot on these guys. They are very cheap power armor. In fact, there's some of the cheapest power armor in the game. It's funny, the Soviets have either got very expensive stuff or very cheap stuff. Now, they are Mark 1 power armor, which you can take at 22 points per bloke. So for a squad of veterans, you're looking at 110 points. For a squad of regulars, 95 points for a squad of power armor. Unheard of. I don't think anyone else in the entire game can do that, right? But honestly, you're going to go for the damage value 6+. So 110 points. Still, I think that might be the cheapest power armor in the game. Which sounds great, right? The problem is that they just have SMGs. You got a couple of blokes that can take anti-tank rifles, sure, fine, whatever. But they just have SMGs. They don't teleport. They're not fast. I mean, you could give them RPGs, I guess. But if you gave a squad of 5 of them RPGs, then why aren't you just... At that point, you're starting to get up with an anti-tank rifle. At that point, you're basically paying the same amount as a squad of Guards Mark 1, which are just better. So, they're cheaper, they're faster, but they just don't really have much damage output. I suppose if you were looking for... If you took a squad of 10 of them and just use them as the most durable way that you can take advantage of Heroes of the Soviet Union Army Special Rule, then they have play. That's cool. That works. That makes sense. They have play. But all they're then doing is being that force multiplier. I think I prefer doing it with the Mark 1s simply because they're not just a force multiplier, they then also bring in some DACA to the table. So I'm not convinced by the Guards Mark II armored infantry. They are very cheap power armor, but that is all they are. But up next, we have the Morazgul, the Siberian terror troops. I like these guys. I think they're very, very solid. So, they're 140 points for 5, and they come in at 28 points per bloke. Sounds kind of spenny, but they are damage value 6+ straight off the bat, and they are veteran as well, meaning they're likely to do as they're told. They have Infiltrator, which can get them into cool, interesting places. But the big one is they're fast with Fieldcraft. Huge. You can charge 16 inches, even through terrain, and get into combat with people. The only real downside to this unit is that they don't natively come with any pen. They need a surging bonus to get +1 pen, which is a bit annoying. It's a little annoying, but they still have access to that. And you can use things like Rift Mastery to try and get them an extra dice, although at the moment, I believe the only Rift Mastery you have in your army is Drugov, and he would have to basically sacrifice all of his own dice to do it, which I don't think you're going to do. I don't think you're going to do it. I think you're probably going to just hope that the +1 pen comes up at some point, or you're going to steal a surging dice from your opponent using Soviet Rift Tech, stolen Rift Tech, right? The cool thing about them is the Killing Mist. So they bring with them their own soft cover. When you order a Morazgul squad, they can opt to create an icy mist around themselves for the remainder of the game term. Now, this can also be when they go down, because they're not fearless, which at first you think is a bit of a pisser, but actually it turns out it's quite good, because you could go down with this unit and then generate the Killing Mist to, like, out in the open, you would have a 3+ save with these guys, which is kind of spicy when you think about it. So it's a really good defensive ability when you think about it in that light. And going down with these guys is way less of an issue because of fast and fieldcraft. You're not really losing out much time. You're still going to be bombing up the board, getting where you need to go, right? So the Killing Mist is really good in a defensive way, but it's also phenomenal with on the offensive, because a bit like the Axis, like Falcon troops, they can use this ability to negate any defensive position. So the opponent doesn't strike before them. They strike at the same time when they're attacking someone who's in a defensive position. And if they're attacking someone who's in open ground, they actually get to strike first. So, which can make up for the fact they don't have any native pen in combat, because they can get the first wounds in, which can help reduce some of the clapback, right? If they have an exhausted penalty, they may not be issued a run order. So if they're exhausted, they can still advance 8, but they can't run, which is not as bad for them as it is on something like Shibitu or Totenkor, because these guys have got guns, right? They've got guns. They come with SMGs. Now, one of the big questions is, do you upgrade them to have assault rifles? And I'm thinking no. I'm thinking it's only 2 points per guy, so maybe you give some of them assault rifles, maybe. But I'm kind of feeling like the idea of these guys is to get up close and personal. So keep the standard SMGs. But it depends on how you think they're best used. I see these guys a little bit like Naxalben. They're very fast, but they have to pick and choose who they're going to beat up in combat, right? So you could go for a unit, give them all assault rifles, and then have the intention of basically seeing them as a shooter unit rather than an assault unit. A shooter unit which can do a bit of assault now and then. But what you do is you run around with them at 16 inches, just blasting people. And then when you or when you get caught out in the open, let's say you go with these guys last, and then next turn your opponent gets a drop on them and they haven't got an all dice next to them. So you're like, okay, you then can go, oh, I'll go down and I'll activate a killing mist. That's kind of how I think you look at them and you think, oh, they are going to be premier melee assault troops. They're not. I think these guys are more specialist regular infantry. And regular infantry isn't really assault, right? So I think the way you use these guys is they're fast, they're durable, but killing mist is good for keeping them alive. And then if such an opportunity arises, they get in there, start smashing face. But if it doesn't, that's fine. Long story short, I think the Moraz Ghoul are more of a cerebral unit, whereas a lot of the other Soviet units are just get in there, start smashing. With a great example of that being the Ursus infantry. Okay, these guys are amazing. These guys are amazing. You should be running a squad of these in your army. Unless you really, don't want to, you should be running a squad of these in your army. And honestly, 5 or 6 of them. They're fearless, so they're always going to do as they're told. They're hard to kill with damage value 7+. They have on demand the ability to gain fast and pen +3, so they can really keep up with those Schreckwolfen. They could potentially go to damage value 8+ as well. They're large, so they just smash through terrain. And they're deadly force. They're 4 attacks per guy. Yes, they're 43 points per model. Do you go for the mauls? Solid maybe on going for the mauls. The thing with the mauls is that even though you have deadly 4, the infantry versus vehicle rules are very specific. On each infantry model only gets to make 1 attack versus the vehicle. So you don't get to make 4 attacks. You get to make 1 attack. I could be wrong on that. Correct me if I am. Put it down in the comments. But I think with the mauls, I think that what that kind of means is you're getting... I think the mauls are fine. I think the mauls are totally fine. Maybe you just... you have to give the whole unit mauls, or it's not a... Because it's an upgrade, it's not a weapon option. So you have to decide if you go all mauls or not. But personally, running a squad of 5 or 6 of these guys, no mauls, running them up the board and just battering stuff, it's like a sledgehammer. And it really allows you to just put the hurt on the enemy, put the pressure on the enemy. And the Ursus infantry embody that playstyle I was talking about at the beginning of the video. Get up close. Be the sledgehammer. Be like the orcs. Get in there and start cracking heads. But now we get to my favorite Soviet unit. And what I wasn't expecting to be my favorite, but they've just completely won me over. It is the Muscle Mummies. It is the Daughters of the Motherland. Now, I said I was surprised. I surprised myself when these became my favorite because I think of myself as like a man, and I don't play women in video games. I play men in video games, and I want manly men units. And then I got to use the Daughters of the Motherland, and they were just really good. Really, really solid unit. And I really like this unit from a lore point of view, and I really like this unit on the tabletop. Now, the reason I like them from a lore point of view is because they're badass women soldiers done right. So they originally were created as just like a propaganda all-female unit, like just there like posing for like video shots and everything. But then if you read into the lore around them, they ended up getting committed to battle in a really desperate situation, and loads and loads of them died. They got absolutely massacred, but they held on. So it wasn't like they were like Mary Susan. They ran around just being like, oh, and then we beat everyone with no effort whatsoever. No, they got mashed, but they held the goddamn line, and they proved that they were capable, and they earned that. And that's what I love about it. So it kind of reminds me of like Ripley from Aliens, badass women who fucking are badass because they've shown that they're badass, not just because it's just because they are, right? And then you get to use them on the tabletop, and you really, really feel that because, firstly, they're fast. So they're going 8 and 16, which is great. Secondly, they come with assault rifles. Thirdly, they have Rallying Cry, which allows them to remove D3 pins from themselves and other enemy units around them. And then they can take the ZA guns, which are like short-range wub guns, which give them an extra rift die. So they're 20 points each for those ZA guns. Worth it. Take 2 every time. Don't even question it. They're awesome. Don't even think about it. They're awesome. And yeah, they're very expensive. They're 28 points per model. And then 29 points for each ZA gun. So I find that I like taking them in squads of 7. Gives me just a little bit more chunk to the unit, and also gives them also it's a nice balance between chunk and also cost. And they're fanatics as well, and if they get a surging bonus, they can get hard to kill. So they're very spenny. They're an expensive unit, but they're a capable unit. And I used them in my first game and sort of disrespected them. I'll just send them up there. And they basically took a whole flank single-handedly. And I was like, okay. Now I don't leave home without at least 2 units of these. If you want my advice on how I would put these together, I would buy 1 box of the Daughters of the Motherland, and then I'd get 2 of the Patriot team boxes. That'll give you 14 muscle mummies for 2 squads of 7. And then what I do is I use the model which with the LMG. I don't pay for the LMG, by the way, because they don't have augmented. So it costs 2 crew to use that LMG, but you don't get any extra shots from it because they come with the assault rifle. So no, but you just use the LMG model to represent like the sergeant, and then you have 5 of the assault rifles and then 2 with the ZA guns, and that's just really, really strong. Auto include in my mind. That covers all of the infantry, but now let's get to the weapon teams. First up, we have got the machine gun teams, and you can take MMGs, but you could also take HMGs. Now, what's funny is in regular bolt action, MMGs are seen as better than HMGs. In Konflikt 47, I probably wouldn't bother with MMG teams. The lack of pen, it can be a problem in a world of power armor. I mean, yeah, they're cheap. They are cheap. I'm not going to take that away from you. They are cheap. But if you were thinking of taking an MMG team, I think you better spring in for the HMG team and just getting that pen going. Then we've got some of the smaller teams, and we've got the anti-tank rifle teams. These are great. Truth be told, I would consider a pair of these in an assault platoon almost an auto include. 25 points regular. Don't bother with veteran. Just go regular for them. And they just come with a pen 2 rifle. And against power armor and Schreckwolfen, really strong. For 25 points, just being able to just slap a couple of extra dice in the bag, which actually do something, is great. It kind of reminds me, again, of like bot action. In bot action, AT rifle teams just aren't really seen as worth it. But in K47, they've got so much more they're going after that they really are worth it. Speaking of anti-tank rifles, you also get the sniper team, and they can be upgraded with an anti-tank rifle as well. And this is a really good anti-tank rifle because it retains all the benefits of sniper. So you get a 48-inch range, you get +1 to hit against infantry, and you get +1 pen against infantry. Honestly, taking 2 anti-tank rifle teams and then a sniper team at regular with another anti-tank rifle, you could do a lot worse than that. A lot worse. Chucking all that together, you're looking at 77 points plus 50, 127 points. And that's just part of your rifle platoon. No additional platoons needing to be taken. No additional taxes and platoon officers needing to be taken. No. Nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. Just 3 anti-tank rifles, one of which is basically a super anti-tank rifle, all of which are a threat to your opponent. And it's shit like this which I think makes the Soviets one of the best armies if you want to not run as much Rift stuff. Because we've been gushing over the Rift stuff, like the Daughters and the Earths and the Mars. We've been gushing over that stuff. But there is that element of being like, you know what? I want to fight against the Rift with basic dudes. I want to be like the Imperial Guard, holding back the darkness with balls and bayonets, right? And it's shit like this. The sniper team with anti-tank rifles and the cheap access to anti-tank rifle teams, which makes Soviets really be able to do that. HMG teams, sniper teams, anti-tank rifle teams, hordes of basic dudes still doing what they need to do. All of that really, really works and feels like you are just the normal guys in a world of horrors. Next, we've got the mortar teams. Now, the light mortars are kind of interesting here because, again, they're very cheap. You can probably get away with taking them as inexperienced due to how indirect fire rules work. So 21 points, and you can take 2 of them in an assault platoon. You can really juice up those assault platoons with all the accoutrement, and at 1,500 points, it's so cheap that you really don't mind. We talked about that with 127 points. If you then took 2 light mortar teams, you're looking at 169 points. And that's 5 dice in the bag, no additional platoons needed. You see what I mean? Soviets can really take advantage of these extra weapon teams. Now, do you go for medium mortars and heavy mortars? I would say I'd avoid them. Now, the reason I'd avoid them is these are static and they tend to rely upon your opponent staying still and you being able to zone in on them. But Konflikt 47 is a much more mobile game. Much more mobile. So I'm thinking, don't bother with medium mortars, don't bother with heavy mortars. They're going to require an extra platoon. They're going to require an extra platoon officer attacks. They're more expensive. Stick to the cheap extra weapon teams, and that'll be where it'll work. Then we have the flamethrower teams. I'm not convinced by the flamethrower teams. In bot action, they're great, but in Konflikt, you can take flamethrowers in your basic infantry. Now, we've been talking about basic infantry as these inexperienced shit munchers, right? But you can absolutely do the same thing as everyone else and take small, more capable basic infantry. And if you were going to take a flamethrower team at 50 points or 65 points veteran, I really just think you might as well take a basic infantry squad at 5 man strong, so even cheaper for the Soviets. They don't have to take them in 6 mans, then stick a flamethrower in there. To me, it's a no-brainer that you do it that way instead. So flamethrowers, good, definitely think of taking advantage of them, but I'd put them as flamethrowers in squads, not flamethrower teams. But now it's time to look at some bigger guns with the artillery. We've got light artillery, medium artillery, and heavy artillery. I don't think you want any of these. And that's not because they're bad. It's because the Soviets don't really struggle for templates because of your shockwave technology. Now, you can absolutely still include them. And I don't think like I said before, I don't think any of them are bad choices at all. Being able to take a light artillery team or medium artillery team and just bang those big templates with those big pens into people, great. But you can basically do the same thing with your ZA guns and your ZP guns, except for they ignore cover all of the time, whereas your artillery only ignores cover when it's firing indirectly. And with the minimum ranges that artillery have being quite punishing, I think like medium artillery, it's got like a 36-inch range, 36 minimum range when fired indirect. If fired direct, you're fine, but when fired indirect, I think you're better just going for ZA, ZP guns, and that will give you the templates that you want, and they'll have the ignores cover. Where I think you want to be looking for artillery is your anti-tank guns. One thing that the Soviet Union struggles with is ranged anti-tank. The only affordable ranged anti-tank vehicle you have is the T-34-85. It's basically T-34 like ZP, but you take the ZP gun off and put a heavy anti-tank on it. Now that's good, but that's like 225 points and it's one gun. And for the same price, you could get 3 anti-tank gun teams and a platoon commander. And okay, it's a little bit more, but that platoon commander could also have a point of guts. And that gives you actual long-range punch. Because at the end of the day, medium AT is medium AT. You can't disrespect it. Too many commanders in bolt action, Konflikt 47, disregard, like, oh, on the start set comes the medium AT, going, oh, I'm never going to use that. Disrespect at your own peril. I've had medium anti-tank guns consistently punch above their weight, and every time that I've sort of fallen for the online propaganda of, oh, anti-tank guns aren't that good, I've always been surprised at how well mine have pulled their weight, because they're just cheap and they're affordable in a 1,500 point game. Really, you haven't got space for an artillery platoon of 2 medium anti-tank guns and an officer coming in with a point of guts, coming in at 170 points. Yeah, you do have space for that, and you should be taking that. Yeah, so I don't think you need the anti-tank guns. I think you can have things like Ursus run up tanks and just like batter them. You absolutely can do. But if you are struggling for ranged anti-tank, this is where you need to be looking, because it's cheap and it's actually good. Heavy anti-tank guns, good. I think if you want to spring for those, I have no complaints about that. I think medium AT is the nice balance, but let us not forget the light anti-tank gun. Light AT has really found a place in Konflikt 47 with the amount of power armor and monsters running around. In bot action, you disregard it because no one's really bringing good targets you to shoot into. But in K47, people really are. Like the Style Trooper, an auto include upgrade for the Style Trooper for the Axis is the light anti-tank gun. And you can get them too here, but your power armor doesn't get light anti-tank guns. So if you want to feel the same thing, you should be going here. And honestly, they're really not a bad choice. I think it really comes down to what gap in your capabilities do you have? Are you struggling against power armor like Style Trooper? I think a light anti-tank gun's not the worst shout in the world. Are you facing off against a lot of mechs? A lot of light mechs, like Guardian mechs, light anti-tank guns can really help you there. But for most people, I think the light AT is a bit light. I think the heavy AT is a bit expensive. I think if you're a Soviet commander wanting long-range anti-tank, the medium AT team has got you covered. 2 of 3 of these, artillery platoon, bosh. Now, we do have a couple of other options here, but I put these separately because they're kind of spicy. You've got the super heavy anti-tank gun, and you've got the ZP team. Now, the super heavy anti-tank team, it's a big gun. It is a flex. Oh, I think at 140 points, it's just a bit spenny though. I think it's a little spenny, and it's only 5 soldiers, and they're only damage value 4+, and I think there's a risk that your opponent just goes, oh yeah, grav pulse, and just kills them. Do you know what I mean? And then they could do the same thing to your medium anti-tank gun, but that's only 70 points, not 140. So I love the idea of the super heavy anti-tank gun. I think it's an absolute flex. It's just like slapping your cock down on the table, but it's more of a rule of cool than a maybe sensible choice. On the other hand, the Zhukovoy Projector team, I want to like it. I do want to like it, and it is, I think, the cheapest way of getting a Rift Dice into your army. Because Mora's Ghoul are 140 points, Daughters are over 150. Yeah, I think it's the cheapest way of getting a Rift Dice, but it has a big problem. It's only got a 24-inch range. The ZP team, the ZP gun, the Zhukovoy Projector, it's only got a 24-inch range. And this thing's fairly static. It is cheap at 120 points, 156 points veteran, but I think the range is going to make me leave this thing at home. I think it would be a really cool unit to include in if you're doing a big narrative game and you were in a defensive position, so you knew the enemy was coming to you. And let's say you're doing like the second battle of Stalingrad or something like that. And so you know the enemy is going to be coming to you, and you know they're going to be like coming down like narrow streets and stuff. Just having one of these on like ambush, like covering a street, the enemy comes close and you just go Fuzzle-da! And just like blast them. That would actually be really, really cool. But outside of that scenario, I think the range is a very limiting factor for them. But enough of this infantry shit. I know why you're here. The armoured fist of the Soviet bloc, the vehicles. And let's begin with the walkers. First in the pipe, we have the Kazakh Light Walker. These are cheap, yet a bit shit. They only have 2 legs, no fists, so they're not very good in melee. They do have the extra pivot thanks to 2 legs, and they do have recce, which is nice, but they're just armed with a light autocannon and an MMG. And 115 points. They're okay. You get what you pay for. They're cheap armor. They can operate a bit of a wolf pack with 2 or 3 of them, but don't expect them to blow you away. Then we get to the Molot. It is the most Soviet walker I have ever seen. It is just a giant brick of armor with guns, and I love it. Now, it comes with a forward-facing medium anti-tank gun. Solid, good anti-tank choice. You need that range anti-tank, right? And it comes with twin forward HMGs, which is good because they've got pen. And pen is good. Now, they're not arm-mounted, so you are going to get 6 shots from those 2 HMGs, but that's fine. It's okay. Better than MMGs, so yeah, fine. Reinforcement armor is nice, but against a rail cannon, it's probably not going to help you. But not everyone's going to be running rail cannons, so it's not the end of the world. It is slow, though, but considering it's not very good in melee, that's not really a problem. It's probably just going to go, boom, just like sit in an area and just be like, bang, da 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 da, bang, da 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 da, bang. Da, da. That's kind of how you want to be thinking about it. 238 points means that for what is essentially an armor 10 walker on the front, yeah, I like it. I like it. It only has one downside. It doesn't have any rift weapons. But it doesn't have any rift weapons yet. Now, I was at the Warlord Open Day, and Warlord themselves have since given a few hints that they expect the D40 Molot to be getting Zhukovoy weapons in the future. Now, if the Molot ends up getting a ZP gun that it can swap out instead of the medium anti-tank gun, that would be awesome. If it got twin forward-facing like ZA guns, that would be less good. I mean, it would be fine. It'd be totally, totally fine. I'm not saying it'd be bad, but it's slow with guns that only have a 6-inch range. So that would be kind of harder to get them into the fight. And I'd really be wondering, why wasn't I just taking Daughters of the Motherland to achieve that, right? But I think the Molot is just a really solid gun walker. And when you come, it looks expensive at 238 points, but when you think about it, it's basically the same price as a T-34 with a medium anti-tank gun, with a heavy anti-tank gun. So you miss out on the heavy AT, but you get the 2 HMGs and you're tougher. So I think that's actually pretty equals pequals. And I'd probably rather have the HMGs and a medium AT gun than a heavy AT gun and 1 MMG, right? I'd almost definitely rather have that because the MMG is not that meaningful. And then if I'm going with the T-34, I'm just essentially putting everything on the one big gun shop. So no. So I prefer the Molot over the T-34 with AT gun for sure. And also it just looks great. It definitely passes the rule of cool. But if you thought that the Molot was a big boy, let me introduce you to the Mammoth Heavy Walker. Now, earlier in this video, I said that if you put a super heavy anti-tank gun on the table, it was like slapping your cock on the table. That was a bit of an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration, though, when it is the same thing when you put a mammoth on the table. The mammoth is a beast. It's one of the biggest walkers in the game. It's super heavy, so unless your opponent is running a rail cannon, then they're probably not threatening it. And it comes with 4 legs, which makes it half decent running through people in combat. But it's expensive at 495 points. It's slow. And whilst it comes with a lot of firepower, a light howitzer, a heavy howitzer, and a couple of HMGs, one covering the front, one covering the rear, none of that firepower ignores cover. None of that firepower is sort of like anti-tank. So the mammoth will really struggle in armored duels. I mean, if you're bringing a mammoth and someone brings like a Zeus, you're in deep doo-doo, right? But the mammoth is still, you don't want to get hit by a light howitzer or a heavy howitzer, right? It's still bringing good firepower. But the thing about the mammoth, in my mind, is that it's like an Imperial Knight in 40k. If your opponent hasn't brought sufficient anti-tank to deal with it, it's just going to run amok. Absolutely going to run amok, and your opponent is just going to bully people. But the moment that your opponent has the firepower to deal with it, even something as simple as a rail cannon, and Panther rail cannons are very, very common and very popular, then it's just going to go straight down. So it's either oppressive because your opponent can't deal with it, or a bit shit because your opponent can deal with it. It's a very, very, very cool unit, but I fear it's a little expensive for how black and white it is. Next, we have the Mastodon Heavy Walker. And I do feel this somewhat falls into a similar category to the Mammoth. It's super heavy, but it's slow. And it's expensive at 430 points. It doesn't have a rift ability. Neither one of these things have a rift ability. And its whole thing is that it's got a super heavy anti-tank gun. I don't care about the MMG. HMG, maybe, but I don't care about the MMG. I don't care about the coax MMG. So I'm spending a lot of points on a super heavy anti-tank gun. And yeah, super heavy tank guns are great, but they're not 430 points great. And if I try and have a Mastodon get into a fight with another vehicle which is also dedicated towards anti-tank, like a Rail Panther, I'm in danger. So the only way this thing works is like an Imperial Knight. Either it dominates because my opponent can't deal with it, or it doesn't dominate because my opponent handily deals with it. And there's no in between with this thing. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, because both of these walkers are really, really phenomenally cool. They're really like centerpiece units. They're kind of like Bane Blades for the guard. You want one as a bit of a showpiece. It's kind of like, you've made it as like a Soviet player when you've got one of these things. Do you know what I mean? But on the board, they do have limited tactical capabilities. But something which has a lot of tactical implications and absolutely has a home in most Soviet lists is the T-34 ZP. Clocking in at 240 points regular, it comes with a hull-mounted MMG, which you don't really care about, but it comes with the Zhukovoy Projektor, the ZP gun. Now, the ZP gun on the weapon team was immobile, so it suffered from the range issue. Because this one's mobile, it's a tank, you can just move it 9 inches each turn and shoot it. No issues whatsoever. And it's just a solid unit. I've used one in a few games now, and it's never completely blown me away, but it's never completely let me down either. It's always just been a solid workhorse unit, exactly what you would expect, like something from the T-34. I think taking one of these and a Molot is a really good armored core for your Soviet force. It's going to come in, take that in like an armored walker platoon. It's going to come in at about 500 points, so it's not overly draining your list because you're getting 2 units. One of them's got a Rift dice, and you've got a nice group of units that complement each other. The Molot's bringing the HMGs and the good old medium anti-tank gun. The T-34ZP is bringing the Zukovoy projector, meaning that it's bringing that ignores cover and that template goodness, right? The 2 units really complement each other really well, and the fact that both of those units exist in the Soviet starter army, I think is really phenomenally good, because it means you've got easy access to them, and most players are going to start with that combo, and they're going to start with their best foot forward. Now we have the KVZP. It's 320 points, so it's pretty expensive. And it just has exactly the same damage output. Exactly the same damage output as a T-34. So you're spending essentially 80 points more to be slower, tougher, and then tough all around. Armored all around basically means your opponent doesn't get the bonus pen for hitting you on the side. And I think they only get pen +1 for hitting you on the rear. Now, it's easy to discount that. It's easy to overlook it and dismiss it. And but we've talked a lot about like Axis, like railcans and stuff, but there is another unit you really need to be careful of, and that is the American Fireflies. Fireflies deep striking down and shooting you in the rear is a big problem for a lot of armies. The Fireflies are pen +1, then they're a rift weapon. Then they're a non-rift weapon with pen. So in point blank range, they get another +1 pen. And then if they're shooting you in the rear armor, then they get another +2 pen. Meaning that they can gain something like the T-34ZP. They're actually going to be damaging you on 5 ups. And even a squad of 6 of them, they're going to be hitting on 2s with an Arsenal Democracy reroll. And then they're going to be wounding you on 5s, and they're gonna get a couple of wounds through. They might pop your T-34. On the other hand, the KVZP is armor value 10, and the Fireflies only get a +1 pen bonus when shooting you in the bum, which means in total their bonus would only be +3, which means they can't actually kill the KVZP on the rear. So it's very easy to just go, oh, 234, same firepower for cheaper points. But do not forget the KVZP. If you are finding your T-34 is constantly getting bummed by Fireflies, then maybe the answer is a KV. Same capabilities, a lot more durable, and basically immune to Firefly death drops. There is one more ZP unit, and that is the ZP emplacement. You should only take this in a narrative scenario. Simple reason is that it's completely immobile, and it still suffers from the range issue of like the ZP mobile team. At least they were a little mobile. At least they could get into position, right? But this thing, it's got to go in like 6 inches of your deployment zone. It's only got 24-inch range. Yeah. No, leave this at home. This is not worth it. Finally, we have the transports and tows, and all of these are really solid. I actually think the Soviets have some of the best choices because they've got a really wide variety, and they pair nicely with the units that they can take. So first up, you've got the truck. It's very cheap and it can transport a lot of blokes, but it is only damage value 6+, so as far as vehicles goes, it's likely to die. And then you've got the M3 white scout car. Now, it's really interesting comparing the scout car to the truck because they both have got the same movement distance, but one comes with no gun and one comes with an HMG. And we like HMGs, don't we? Because they've got pen. Now, one could only transport 8 soldiers and one could transport 12. But actually think about how many guys you're probably likely to transport. A big 10-man squad in a truck, hey, you can do it. And we're talking 10-man Mark 1 power armored guys. They're the ones that really need a transport like this, right? That's going to come in at 327 points. Or you take 8 guys, so you're losing 2, but then you put them in the white scout car. Now, they're more likely to get where they need to go, thanks to damage value 7+. And it's actually a little cheaper. It turns out, I think it's about 308 points versus like 327 points. So you're not losing out on too much firepower because you're still getting the HMG. It's kind of like you're only losing out on like one guy's firepower, just over. So there's there's something to be said for scout car and 8 bozos over 10 guys in a truck. Then you've got the T20 Cosmolets. Now these aren't as fast, but they are durable. They come with basically no firepower, but they can transport up to 6 soldiers, and they're still cheap at 46 points. I think if you get one of the old Soviet starter armies and you have like 5 of those Mark 1 power armored guys, getting a T20 Cosmolet for them is really not a bad shout at all. Now, where do you get the Cosmolet models? You can find them all over the place, but one thing that I like to do with them is use Bren carriers, because the Bren carrier was supplied to the Soviet Union in insane quantities, and it's basically the same size. It's got the same loadout, and you get them. You can get them from Warlord in plastic for a very affordable price, and also you can get them. You find that a lot of Warlord starter armies include Bren carriers, and so for me, I think the Cosmolet is a really interesting choice because it's quite easy to get your hands on it, and it's also can transport just the right amount of blokes for the Soviets. Finally, you've got the Gaz Jeep. It's very cheap, but it can only transport like 3 blokes. I'm not sure how much it's worth it. I mean, technically, you could put Drugov and 1 bear in a Jeep, which is funny. But I'm not sure, because typically what you use these things for is flamethrower teams. But if you're putting your flamethrowers inside your own squads, you probably don't need the Gaz Jeep. But it's not a bad unit, but I think in K47 it's not the auto include like it is in bow action. But you know what? That just about covers everything. Overall, the Soviet bloc is a fantastic force. They have everything that they need to be successful. Good power armor, good assault infantry, good armor. They do have a bit of a weakness in the case of long-range anti-tank, but they can easily solve that weakness by either just leaning more into the close-range assault stuff or leaning into more classic conventional weapons like medium anti-tank teams, and also maybe a little bit of bolt action goodness as well. But whatever you do with the Soviets, they have the tools that they need to be successful, and they feel very distinctive to the other factions. And as someone who's played a few games with them now, I absolutely love them, and they are one of my favorite armies to play. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And of course, let me know which faction you want me to cover next. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last, but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Pickalock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.